Hey all, this is Lynn with Paper Life, and today I wanted to bring you this idea for a journal cover. It's super flexible. I haven't had any problems with it, and it's made out of paper. It's made out of fabric, and I'm using Mod Podge. So let me go ahead and show you what I did, and we'll work on it together. First thing I want to do is grab some plastic wrap just to kind of protect my work area. Now, in order for this not to be like 10 5-minute videos, I went ahead and cheated and got some of these done kind of ahead of time. I'm just using plastic wrap. The reason for that is any of my Mod Podge that goes over, I don't have to worry about it sticking. So I'm using some copy paper as my backing, some matte medium, now I thought this was like a Eureka moment, and I came up with something that may be new and everybody isn't doing. One of my friends had said that she hadn't seen anything like it, but then during my testing process I had mentioned to another friend that I was hoping it would come out, and she's like, oh yeah, well, because I've done it. I was like, seriously? Darn it. So there are other videos on this. I'm not sure who has them, but just do a search and I'm sure you can find them. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just taking my Mod Podge, and I'm covering my paper with it. I'm being kind of generous with how much I put down for this part because it doesn't really matter. I'm going to cover the top of the fabric with it as well. Now, if you wanted this thicker, you could use thicker paper. You could, maybe use more than one piece. There would be a lot of, customization that you could do on it. I kind of like this. I went through and, well, all the ones that you'll see that I've made, trying to catch at different spots, maybe took me an hour this morning. So it really doesn't take very long. Now, the one thing I didn't do that I would recommend is after you get your last coats on there is let it sit. I usually let mine sit like overnight before I start cutting on it. With that being said, I'm not going to do it that way this time. So now that I stuck my fabric down to my paper, all I'm going to do is put another coat on top. I found with most fabrics that I've experimented with that 2 to 3 layers is usually a fairly good amount. Now there's another part that I'll show you here in a minute where I don't use any paper to back it. On that one, I mean, honestly, I would say that's more like 3 to 4 coats since you don't have the paper there to help support it. So now that that has a fairly decent coat over it, I'm going to set it to the side and let it dry. Now in between coats, I don't let it dry completely. I let it dry till it doesn't look wet anymore. And then I throw another coat on it. Because, well, it doesn't really matter. I got to put another coat on it anyways. So, magic of TV, or magic of camera and YouTube. We have one already done. Well, that step done. So what I want to do at this point is I've already done some of it. I went around and trimmed all the way around. Usually I put one coat down and then I do this. Between this step, I would let the paper, or let it dry a little bit better than what I would do in other steps. But that's just because sometimes this paper wants to kind of give you a hard time if it's still a little wet. So I'm just taking my scissors and I'm going to cut along my paper here. When I did the one that I showed you, this one, I skipped this step. I put both pieces on and then I cut it. I don't know, this seems a little easier for me. With that being said, it may not be easier for you. So if you hate this way, then sorry, try another way. Okay, so now that I have that pretty well cut, one thing that I will do is go around, and a lot of times I have where the paper's wanting to separate from the fabric. I just take a little Mod Podge. Okay, a little, not a whole glopping mess of it, but whatever. Whatever. I put some in between there to just kind of help seal it. And I'm just running my nails along. You can use really anything you have, just to make sure I don't have any separations. Because if I do, now is when I want to catch them. Now, I mean, you can fix them at other points too, but personally, now is when I want to catch them. All right, now that I'm wearing this, we're gonna go ahead and pretend after I fix this spot that this is good so that I can move on. Okay, so we have one side, it's nice and dry. I put 2 coats on there. I'm gonna flip it over on the other side. For this other side, I really just want some white fabric. So I have some plain white fabric here that I've somewhat cut down to size, of course, leaving it a little bit bigger. And I left that bigger than what I really wanted it to be. I don't want it so big that it's a pain to work with. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Okay, I'm just going to cover this all up with Mod Podge. Like so. And here in a second, I'm just going to act like I'm doing another step because you guys don't need to see me do it over and over. This is a lot of just kind of doing the same thing. It would be nice if you had a couple kind of pre-planned out. You can do them all at the same time, because that other one that we did is just about ready for, I could put another coat on it here in just a moment. So it really doesn't take long for this to dry, just enough for me to be able to put more on it. Okay, so now that that's pressed down, now I do have some wrinkles in my paper that's showing through on the fabric. I didn't really care, but that would be on your first step. When you first put the paper on the other side, just make sure that your paper's flat and isn't bowing up or curling. All right, so let's pretend that I have covered this side completely with the Mod Podge. Okay, so we're gonna make believe. After this side would be completely done and dry with the first coat, before I go on to doing the second or the third coat, what I would want to do is come over to this side and just really get up along this edge to help secure those 2 pieces of fabric together along the edge of it, if that makes any sense. And then I would just continue coating this one with its final coat. Like that. In a make-believe world, we're going to pretend like that's all covered. So I'm going to set this one to the side. Yes, there is a lot of drawing in between. Here is our final one. And as you can see, I went ahead and left some of this on here along the side, just to kind of show you that I would just come along here and trim all the way around here. It's going to be a little more challenging at this point because you're cutting through 2 pieces of fabric and you're also cutting through that layer of Mod Podge that you put along that seam. Now at this point you can either consider it done and use it as is, or you can go along and put a little more Mod Podge across the edges and, you know, pick a side and go ahead and cover it. I think I'm actually missing a coat because this seems a little thinner than it should be. So go figure that I missed a spot. So that one is done at this point. I want to show you on my original one. This right here is lace that I did the same thing with, but I did not back it. So I wanted to show you kind of how I did that. And I'm going to take some more plastic wrap because that's what I do, is plastic wrap up my area. I don't know, it just makes it easy because it's not going to stick to it. You don't have to worry about it. You can pick the whole thing up and move it when you're done. I like it that way. And I have some more Christmas fabric. I guess I'm trying to get ready for next year's Christmas, maybe. So all I did was I laid this down right on my plastic wrap because I'm not going to use the paper this time. Now this was the step I was telling you that I would probably do 3 to 4 coats on each side. You just want to make sure that it has a lot of support to it because it's not going to have the paper. So I'm just putting a coat on here. Once I have this completely coated, I would set it to the side, let it dry for just a little bit, flip it over, do the other side, you know, just back and forth, ring around the rosy, flipping it each time. That's part of the perks of using the plastic wrap. If you flip it over and it's not completely dry, you don't have to worry about sticking on anything because I've done that a couple times. I won't lie. So it just doesn't stick. It takes some of the stress, some of the worry out of it. Kind of fail-proof. You're not going to really mess up a whole lot. Now, the only downside to using the paper like I did is it makes it where your cover is limited on the size that it could be. You're really looking at, excuse me, if you're using standard copy paper, the 8.5 by 11 here in the US. Okay, so we're pretending that that's done on both sides. You know, you could use bigger paper, but it just potentially limits you on that. Because one thing that you could do would be between your 2 layers of fabric is maybe run some lace down there and glue it in. And to be honest, as long as you put a decent amount of layers, I almost don't see why you couldn't just use, I'm folding this over to kind of see, just 2 pieces of fabric. I don't know. I haven't tested that. I haven't done it. So I don't know how it would work. If any of you do it, let me know how it works out. I am going to put this to the side. I'm going to grab our finished one that should have sat overnight to dry, but I was impatient. Go figure. It's kind of hard for me to cut out time when I can make videos, when I don't have kids, dogs, husband, you know, all in the house doing their own projects. So it tends to be more, oh, I have time, let me jump on this real quick. And that's part of the reason that I never have any of this pre-planned out. So all I did was I took my piece of fabric paper Mod Podge and folded it in half to find the spine. I am going to grab a book because I'm going to use my hole punch. I already have some paper that I've cut down to, let me measure it just to make sure. It's 8 1/4 tall by 5 inches wide. So that's going to leave me a 1/4 inch on each side. And actually, I can't measure, so what that should have been was 8 1/4 tall by 5 1/4 wide. Because since I cut it down to 5 inches, it actually leaves me a 1/2 inch overhang. So I'll trim that later. We'll fix it. We will fix it. No one will ever know. Oh, besides if they watch this and find out that I messed up. So I'm just going to take my papers. You could go through and mark these if you wanted to. I'm not in this case. I just kind of want to do it easy peasy. So I'm laying my papers in the center of my spine, or in the center of my book, kind of eyeballing it where I want it to be placed. I'm going to take this is a hole punch for, I thought it was woodworking, but my husband informed me it was originally for metalworking, but it works really well for punching holes in this. So I'm just going to eyeball where I want these, like so. It didn't go all the way through that, but that's okay. I'm just going to figure out where it went to. When it stopped, it went through all the papers, just didn't go through the cover. So I'm just going to redo it through the cover. And this may not actually do the cover because of the fabric. Nope, it doesn't seem like it. So we're going to fix that. I'm just going to take the needle that I was going to use. And I need to change out my thread because I got mixed up on what cover would be done. I don't want blue thread for that one. When I did my original one, I basically did it like a travel journal setup with the elastic through the middle. It worked, however, it was a whole lot more of a fussy pain in the rear end to get to work the way I wanted it to. I don't have any good colors here. So that's why this time I just decided I would sew it in. If you guys want to play around with doing that, I may show you here in a second. I'm going to grab some thread. Okay, sorry about that. Now the camera is going to be a little shaky for a moment, but I didn't want blue. I'm trying to find the end of this. So once we're done with this, if I have time before I got to head out to the gym, I'll show you how, or kind of talk you through how my original one was done. I give up trying to find the end of this. Anybody know where I set my scissors down at? Here, we'll use these. This is embroidery thread. I think it's what it's called. I'm having a brain fart at the moment. And it's an extremely cheap brand. I don't even know where this brand would come from. It's some knockoff paper covered ones that tangles up on me. Okay. I'm going to kind of eyeball this. You basically want to do the length of your cover in your thread for every hole that you have. So what I was doing was lining it up from top to bottom, and I did it 3 and then cut a little extra, because extra is definitely better than not enough. If I can get this to thread into the needle. I use a lot of embroidery thread for my signatures. There's wax papers, or wax threads. There's all kinds of different ones that you can use. Everybody kind of swears by their own. When you eyeball these, you might want to actually make sure you pay attention to the directions. Because I didn't. I've tried a lot of them. I guess the thing I like about the embroidery thread is it comes in a bunch of different colors, and I like the color. I'm not gonna lie. So I'm just doing a fairly simple pamphlet stitch. I say that, and then my thing makes a knot. Unknot yourself. Now you could do this step after you've done your pockets. I don't know. I don't guess it makes too big of a difference. For some reason, I just felt like sewing these in before I made my pockets. Oh, there was a reason why I left that extra 1/4 of an inch. Okay, so I did actually mean to cut it 5 inches wide. And the reason for that was I didn't know how much room my spine was going to take up. I'm so glad there was actually a reason for that. Now, the only bad thing about this type of embroidery floss thread is that it sometimes wants to go back through the thread when you're stitching it. I mean, not that it's the end of the world if that happens. It's just, I guess, a downside, and that just pulled apart in my hands. I guess I had that clipped at one point. All right. So this is how we just roll with things today, guys. We are just going to roll with this. I've never had this stuff break on me like that before. I don't know how I should feel about that. Is this like a bad omen that I shouldn't be doing this video at the moment? Seriously, okay, we are going to change this up. I'm not going to use this thread now. I don't know why it's doing that. All right, so I'm going to pause this for a minute. You've already seen me do this. I'm going to go ahead and do it again with different thread so that it will stay. I will be right back. Okay, that went so much better when nobody was watching. So we have the first part of the book. Now it's a little more flimsy at this point. But I'm okay with that because I have this other piece that matches the front that I want to use for pockets on the inside. So that's going to kind of double it up and make it a little thicker. And I don't know if you can see, but I have all this little, I don't know, frayed. But that's actually the glue from when I was cutting it. I better put this up before it dries out on me. I guess I could have put that up and picked some of this up while I had you on pause. But that would have made sense. And I don't want to do that. So I have paper attached to my fingers at the current moment. All I'm going to do is line this up to the side, kind of try to square this piece up a little bit. Now, again, I rushed this. It would be a lot better if you waited till, you know, let it sit overnight and then went back to it the next day. I didn't do that, obviously, because I don't follow my own advice. So this is going to be a little more tricky on this. It wants to kind of stick. Guys, if you have a problem with your Mod Podge, and you know, it's funny because there's some people that do, and then some people that have no problems at all. Sometimes mine wants to stay like a tacky, sticky. I think it has a lot to do with humidity. There's a lot of tricks out there. I've heard like baking soda, or not baking, yeah, I guess baking soda would work too. Like baby powder. You just kind of sprinkle it on top. You know, kind of work it in a little bit, I guess. Hairspray, I think, was one of the tips for it. I haven't actually used any of those. What I do is after I get done with my pieces, before I put them together, is I take them outside and I hit them with a little clear lacquer. Which, if you hear me say clear lacquer, I'm literally talking about clear, cheap spray paint. So take it outside, hit it with that a little bit. It takes the stickiness out of it. It'll also make it, if you're using, like, for example, glossy Mod Podge and you want it flat, not a problem. You just take it out there and you hit it with spray, or you hit it with clear in a flat. So let's do, I think I'm only going to do one pocket going across here. You guys can figure out all the rest. You're smarty pantses. I don't know why I'm even showing you this part. You don't need me to show you this part. You could very well do this with more than one signature. You know, just kind of blocking out how much you needed for a spine. I just kind of went with the one to make it easy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut 5 inches wide for this pocket. Hopefully cut it straight 5 inches. And the height is 8 inches, if I'm remembering correctly. Yeah, because it would be 8.5, and I took a quarter off on each side, so that would make it 8. All right. I don't think I cut that very straight, but you won't know because I'm going to do something else. Not cut my fingers off. That's my next goal for the day. Now this fabric does have like a right and wrong direction. This way you can't see really any of the flower. This side you can see it better. So I'm going to make sure that I put the right side up. I want this to be about 1.5 inches. So I'm going to take my ruler, and you can't see this at all. I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to put it at my 1.5 inch mark. And I'm going to do probably 1/2 inch up at the top. So now, and you can eyeball this if you want to. It's whatever you want to do on your sizes. Okay, so I'm going to put that to the side. Here's my finished pocket. So it's going to go just like that because I didn't make this the right size. Why did I make that the right size? Oh, because I didn't cut this one down. Oh, I'm such a dork. Okay, so this was 8 inches. This is 8.5 inches. I did this pocket at only 8 inches, but whatever. We're going to roll with it because we can. I'm going to take my 3-in-1. It's just like Fabri-Tac. So Fabri-Tac. Oh my gosh, we were at Hobby Lobby with the kids this weekend. And we were having fun running through trying to find all the different Beacon, Fabri-Tac and all those. And I was like, why does there have to be so many different kinds? Okay, you don't care about that. I'm going to take and put a thin bead. I say thin, but this is me we're talking about. All the way up this side. And down that side. Just like so. Maybe I can get this thing to stop. See, why does mine always do that? Can you guys see this? Oh, not up that close. I always get that bubble. Drives me crazy. It drives me crazy. Oh, more so than normal. So all I'm going to do is kind of place this down here. I'm not worried about it being perfect. If for whatever reason it's not fitting just the way I want it to, I'm going to let it overhang off of my cover, because I can always go back through and just trim that off at a later point once it dries. I mean, don't stress it. This is crafting. I mean, aren't we supposed to have fun at this? Okay, so there's that side of the cover. Now it's already kind of added some weight to it. Once it starts to dry, it'll help a lot with that. Because like I said, here's the one I did. And you can quite literally fold it in half. I mean, it is pliable, but it's not going to really get damaged. Now, I'm not saying to fold this thing in half 20 million times and then tell me that it didn't hold up, because, well, don't fold it in half 20 million times. The way I did this in the middle here was I used a thin piece of cardboard, like pizza box. You want it really thin. I just cut it the width that I wanted my spine to be. I took some Fabri-Tac that's now making a huge mess because of that stupid ball. And secured my, sorry, I'm messing with the Fabri-Tac and forgot what I was saying. Secured my elastic to both sides of it. Then I used the Fabri-Tac again and glued it down in place. Because I had that there and it didn't look super pretty, I took another piece of my lace that I had made and I laid it down in the center. And then I used Fabri-Tac to hold that into place. So, in this project, Fabri-Tac is going to be your friend. Fabri-Tac and Mod Podge. So guys, that is journal. It's simple. It's just paper, fabric, lots of Mod Podge. If you want it to be thicker than this, go ahead and use like cardstock. I'm sure that'll make it where it holds up for a longer period of time, because you're making like a soft cover. How long do soft covers last for? Not as long as hard covers. So there you go. Alright guys, I am about to go head to the gym. So I will talk to all of you later. Come by, hang out with us at Paper Lifers. And I will see you all later. Happy New Year's and all that good stuff.